Welcome to your all-active Reserve and Veterans TV series. This information education show has 3 goals. Tell who military veterans are, share about all organizations, auxiliaries, their programs and officers at all levels, and tell about memorials in all the cities we serve in this network. The VA system, state and county officers, hospitals and state homes are also featured. Please do check out our websites, share your program ideas and concerns via the contact information on the show. We open each month's show with a patriotic theme. Welcome once again, friends, to Vets Visits on TV. This is program number 163 for the month of October, and this is our co-host.
I'm Brad Lindsay, Olmsted County Veteran Services.
And I'm Jerry Barnhart, the founder-producer of the program, and as usual, we're always happy to have you with us. Now let's look at some dates in history, beginning with the fact that our patriotic opening was the Honor Guard of the 1st Cavalry Division Association, their annual convention, and we'll hear more from them later. In the dates in history are the 9th of October 1950, the invasion of North Korea by U.S. forces, and that was in response to the Russian, Chinese, North Korean insult on South Korea. The 13th, the U.S. Navy was established, so anchors away, my boys. The 24th, the United Nations Day. The 25th, the first land battle with the Chinese, with Russian tanks, I should mention, in Korea, the first summer of the Korean War. And in '83, the U.S. forces evacuated the U.S. citizens in the Grenada conflict. So, Brad, what's our first feature?
Well, military museums are found in all sizes and shapes, and Jerry has gone to several states to tape them. Last summer, a military section was added to the Olmsted County Museum, on the edge of Rochester, Minnesota. First, we'll hear some background from the curator, Tom Garcia. Then we'll enter the military section.
The curator of collections at the History Center.
Okay, and we're going to be looking at a military museum in a little while. It has just opened up today, right?
We're going to be looking at the Veterans Gallery exhibit that's just opened in the History Center Museum. Yeah.
Okay. Well, how about some history of the museum itself, first of all?
Sure. Museum was started in 1926. The first president, Bert Eaton, chose a location downtown. Since then, it's been in a few locations downtown and only in our present site at 1973.
So in 73, you had about how much space?
We'll have almost the exact same space as we have right here, and in addition, perhaps 15 years ago, to expand the library and research center.
Okay, and we're looking at a mural now of Broadway, and you know
Yes.
who painted that?
I would have to check on the artist, but
well,
that
that's
is
okay.
the mural that depicts the they're leveling what would become Broadway.
And the rural concept of this area too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Our present location right now is just on the border of, let's say, downtown and the suburbs and the country. So I think we're in a very, very special spot.
Right. And the History Center does a number of other projects too. This is the History Goose for people from non-southeast Minnesota.
Okay.
There are a number of these geese around,
Sure.
right? And it depicts the History Center and its particular interest in through all these pictures.
Yes, the mission of the museum is to be the storyteller of Olmsted County.
Well, Tom, if we may, let's travel back to where the action
Sure.
is. Okay.
So, Jerry, right now we're in one of our main galleries, and the camera is pointed out to our other main gallery where we have exhibits on IBM, decorative arts, and the tornado, 19th century. You're looking at right now the hands-on cabin right to the right. That's a place where museum visitors can actually put their hands on some of the artifacts. We'll also have quite a few programs, educational programs, come through there, not to mention our second grade program. Right now we're taking a look at our Veterans Gallery where we have the new exhibit premiering, Landscapes of Memory. Landscapes of Memory is going to honor all of our veterans during peacetime and war that have served in the major conflicts in the last 150 years in Olmsted County and Minnesota. So on the outside we have a few examples of different uniforms worn throughout the years, as well as images from the current wars all the way back to the Civil War, and inside is where we have the main display. Welcome to the HCOC Veterans Gallery Landscapes of Memory exhibit. Right now we're taking a look at the Civil War section where we have artifacts on display from local persons of Olmsted County and the region. In particular, the Battle of Chickamauga is highlighted in one of the maps, and then also the story of one of our local veterans.
How did you get the uniform, for instance?
Most of the objects you see here are donated by private individuals, just like you and me, that have an interest in history or have an interest in preserving their family stories. We'll take a look at those items and see if they fit in our permanent collections, and we are very happy to have a wonderful collection, small but significant collection of veterans artifacts.
The weapon is from where?
This weapon is from Civil War, of course. It's donated locally, as are most of the other pieces that you see here. About, we'll say 20% of the items that you see right now are on loan to the History Center, and without the generous contributions of community members, this particular exhibit, as well as our other exhibits, wouldn't be nearly as complete.
Right.
Next to that, World War I, La Guerre pour la Civilisation. That's the more common European name for that particular war, and that title happens to be in French. Jerry, if you'll notice that each section, which is a conflict in itself, will have two names. One name that we'll be more familiar with as Americans. In this particular case, it's the World War. At that time, they didn't know there was going to be a Second World War, so they only referred to this war as World War, and the war to save or the war for civilization in French. The large photo that you see in the background is President Wilson asking Congress for a declaration against the Central Powers. Here we have our World War II section, and as you can see, this is one of the centerpieces of our exhibit, a poster from 1943. At that time, during the war years, very, very common for the government to keep Americans involved and participating in the war effort, and one way to spread that word are through mass media posters, fit that niche very well. These posters consider propaganda, of course, but also valued very much for their aesthetic, and this is one of the prime examples, the best examples from World War II. What we have to the bottom left, again, is another alternate name for World War II, and that's Aus der Traum, German for the dream is over. And at the end of World War II, a common name that Germans referred to that as they realized that the war was coming to an end for them, and apparently kind of hard to grasp at that point. In the years between World War I and World War II, we have a poster that was printed, the title, Then, Now, Forever, again referencing America's, the causes behind justified war. And for one of our other very noticeable artifacts and pieces in this exhibit, you have that bas relief sculpture. Underneath that, we have our reproduction of the Rochester Veterans Memorial. This is a memorial worked on by many veterans over the years, right. A lot of which participated in this exhibit. And they have, if you go downtown Rochester and you see the wall, they'll have the names of every veteran that have given their lives, sacrificed their lives for us to be safe in a 50-mile radius of Rochester. Reproduce that in digital format here.
Those that died in battle, the wall of memory.
Yes.
The rest of it, of course, are plaques that people buy, a plaque for their own
exactly.
loved one or for themselves.
And without those veterans' contributions, we wouldn't have this exhibit today. They were the driving force behind this exhibit. They also supported it monetarily. So everything that we see here is a direct result and a benefit from their generosity.
Thank you.
And ending with the Korean War and the Vietnam War section, one of the interesting things that I find about the Korean War, as far as our collection represents, to the right we have a flight suit. And in the years between World War II and Korea, which is a pretty small amount of time, we've gone from one technology into the other, where we're this flight suit representing jet technology and that aspect of combat that the Germans had almost perfected at the end of World War II, and that we're employing from the 1950s on. To the right of that, we have the Vietnam War section, otherwise called the American War, rather, by the Vietnamese, and ending with one of the very famous photographs from Larry Burroughs, who is a war correspondent and photographer in Vietnam that captured some of the most iconic images of that war. One of our goals of this exhibit is to, of course, showcase the stories of the veterans, but also to give the visitor a certain feeling when they come, more reflective upon the human toll, whether it's on the home front or the fields of combat that our veterans have participated in.
Indeed.
We've
Well,
partnered with
sure.
We've partnered with the various veterans groups in the county, in particular the Veterans Memorial Group. We did have in the works a number of years ago a separate veterans museum on the grounds, and recently are talking about a more close partnership between us and those veterans groups. So we decided to move that collection into the museum proper, and that really started to get the ball rolling. And I think the community in general also feels that not only do we have to remember and not forget our veterans and the stories that go along with them, but they want to see these stories on display as a regular aspect of our museum's exhibitions.
And you're a veteran yourself, I understand.
I am. Returned home from Afghanistan and my deployment in September of this year.
Green Berets are still going strong.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for your effort and your ability to be called in for this particular experience of the Olmsted County Veterans Museum.
My pleasure. Thank you.
The Department of Veterans Affairs is making available a new medallion to be affixed to an existing privately purchased headstone or marker to signify the deceased veteran's status as a veteran. If requested, the medallion will be furnished in lieu of a traditional government headstone or markers for veterans that died on or after November 1st of 1990 and whose grave is marked with a privately purchased headstone or marker. The medallion is currently available in 3 sizes, 5 inches, 3 inches, and 1.5 inches, and each medallion will be inscribed with the word veteran across the top and the branch of service at the bottom. Appropriate affixing adhesive, instructions, and hardware will be provided with the medallion. I've got, I don't have an actual medallion yet, but just a little picture there for you of what the medallions will look like. This particular one would be for an Army veteran, and as you can see, has a tri-folded American flag on it, surrounded by a wreath. One important thing to note is this benefit is only applicable if the grave is marked with a privately purchased headstone or marker. In these instances, eligible veterans are entitled to either a traditional government furnished headstone or marker or the new medallion, but not both. Now, partially in response to this new medallion, and probably more importantly, state budget woes, the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs has decided to discontinue their Bronze Star marker program for veterans who pass away on or after June 1st, 2010. These markers were previously provided by that department for all Minnesota veterans, and the markers served double duty as a flag holder for such occasions as Memorial Day. These are provided or available to be purchased by private sources. Show you those markers. Most veterans you probably see in cemeteries have these currently, and these will no longer be available for those veterans who pass away after June 1st.
And as usual, they can get more information by checking with their local service officer.
Absolutely.
And that would be a contact they would make when they get their American flag?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
You bet.
And mortuaries, undertakers would have that information?
They would as well. You bet.
Okay. All right, on to our next feature. In August, we shared part 1 of the annual 1st Cavalry Division Association Convention. Now in part 2, we'll see some more interesting events. First, Carl Booth introduces Julie King of Red Wing, I believe, who has gone twice to Vietnam, where her brother had served. We'll hear part of an interview again with Walt Westerman from the Minneapolis area, and then attend the Saturday night banquet where he was honored because, of course, it is his 100th birthday back in January, I believe. And then the Saturday night banquet, that's where he was honored. And Sunday, we'll see the memorial service with a brief intro by the National Executive Officer from down in Texas, Dennis Webster. We'll hear more as time permits.
1st Squadron, 9th Cavalry, and I was the commander of that organization in 1969. This is Julie Kink. Julie is an honorary member of the 9th Cavalry. Her brother was assigned the 1st to 9th in about July of 69 and was killed in August of 69. Julie has been with our unit and supported us for a long time, and I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce her to you and tell her story.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. As Pete said, my name is Julie Kink, and my brother David was a scout pilot who served in Charlie Troop, 1st of the 9th Cav, and was killed in 1969 when he was 19 years old, and I had just passed my 8th birthday. So to be among veterans like this at a gathering like the 1st Cavalry Division Association's reunion is It's very special, and it means a lot to me because I never got to hear some of these stories. And so to hear the veterans as they're telling about the good times and the bad times that they had when they were in one of the most intense periods of their lives is something that can never be replaced. So I really appreciate hearing all the stories.
And where are you from now, and where were you and your brother from at that time that he entered the service?
I live in Stillwater, Minnesota. So welcome to Minnesota. And at the time that my brother entered the service, we lived in southern Wisconsin. So we're local folks.
Well, Julie, you gave a very wonderful a reminiscence of 2 trips that you made to Vietnam. Would you care to share some of the feelings that you had in the process?
I was able to go to Vietnam for a 2-week military historical tour in May of 2006 and again in May of 2009. And so in total, I have spent a month in Vietnam, which was the equivalent of the time that my brother spent there. I was concerned primarily because of feeling that my presence might impact the experience for the veterans who were on the tour. I didn't want to hinder their experience of the country that they had served with. I didn't want them to feel like they had to be quiet around me or anything.
It was supposed to be a healing process.
It was very healing. It's just the opposite. Yes.
Yeah. So you maintained your composure as a recorder as well of the many who died in that particular war.
Yes, and I think for family members, the most important thing is to know that our loved ones were not forgotten. And I have crossed paths with many family members of men who also were killed in Vietnam, so I took many of those men's names with me so that I could just say them to myself in that country in a time of peace, and that was important to me.
Thank you so much for sharing with us, and I'm sure the people who are here for this luncheon today, some 40 of them, were very impressed by your relating the memories.
Oh, I have so much to repay. I owe a great deal to these men.
And thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
They discontinued using a lot of the horses at Fort Riley when I went there, and we rode those horses over to Fort Function across the field. I don't know how many. I think it must have been a couple hundred horses we took down there.
Yep. There are no horses at Camp Funkston when I was there in '48, but they had some in the stables there at Fort Riley. Now, from basic, where did you serve? Anywhere overseas?
Yeah, we went overseas as infantry.
Okay.
We disposed of the horses when we were down to Fort Bliss.
Oh, okay.
We only spent 13 weeks at Fort Riley. Then we were attached to the 1st Cavalry Division, which was the home base was Fort Bliss, Texas at that time.
Well, where did you go overseas?
Went overseas in '43.
And where?
To Australia.
Okay, to Australia, the Pacific Theater.
Yeah.
And you served with the infantry there.
Yeah.
So you moved from island to island.
Yeah. We went to New Guinea and stayed there for a while. And then we had our first campaign was in Admiralty Island. We took that I was trying to think of what month it was in '43.
saber in honor of your 100th birthday and many more. Proceed.
Well, my friends, that about does our show for today, but a couple of things we want to remind you. If you or your organization would like information on support and expanding vets visits, we do suggest that you visit our website, which you've seen on the program, and you'll find a lot of information there on the network and some past features. Brad, it seems to me we have a ghostie hanging around the place, don't we?
Yeah, I didn't even see any reason for me to sit in. He could have handled it.
That's right. We haven't decided what to name our friend here, but anyway.
Dusty.
Dusty?
Dusty. I think we've settled on Dusty.
Yeah, I think so. You're the second person that's recommended that. So we welcome Dusty for our October show, and his friend.
That one Jack will work.
Jack, okay. His friend Jack. Isn't that short for John or something?
Yes, yep.
Okay. Glad you could join us today. Fun, nice to have a little bit of fun once in a while, isn't it? And I hope that you'll tell your friends and join us again next month, same time and channel for Vets Visits on TV.
Thank you for joining us for this month's show. Seen in over 350 communities for over 3,500 half-hour periods. Our websites have additional information about the show and are updated bi-monthly. To contact us, you are welcome to use one of these electronic methods. For all ground mail with questions, suggestions for future programs, you may use this address. Our IRS nonprofit status is 501c3, Information Education. The Minnesota Commissioner of VA and these state-level organizations believe in and endorse Vets Visits. Join us next time, won't you, for Vets Visits on TV.